introduce or help to introduce our two guest speakers today. The first is Samantha Williams from Travelport. Samantha, welcome. And the second is Ken Kuguru.
You got it.
From Egencia. Ken, welcome. Why don't we start off by asking each of you just to give a brief introduction of yourselves. Samantha.
Super, thank you. So I work for Travelport. I'm based in Singapore.
I think you have to talk like really close and really loud.
All right, yeah. Super. So based here in Singapore, I'm responsible for our corporate direct customers and our enterprise group. And been with Travelport for the last 14 years, so pretty much my whole life.
And Singapore said for 4 years now.
Last 4 years, South Africa before that, and London before that.
Great, welcome. Ken.
So I'm a relative newcomer to Egencia Expedia Group and also to the travel industry. So I've been in Singapore now about 3.5 months. Before that, I was in Nairobi, Kenya, also working in, let's say, hospitality industry. So a little bit of a different industry, but at least maintaining the hospitality side. And then 10 years before that in Shanghai, China. So I'm not new to the region. So definitely APAC is the region I think is most exciting and the reason why I chose to be here. But now I'm with Egencia Expedia Group.
Do you speak Mandarin?
我会说中文.
Whoa. Like that. All right, let's get into the questions, and we'll try to make this a conversation. If anybody wants to join the dialogue, raise your hand, man. I'll run down with a mic, and you guys can ask questions as well. So we're going to start out with all these trend buzzwords: machine learning, AI, blockchain, big data. What's the one kind of trend or category that you think is actually having real impact on the corporate travel landscape?
You want me to take the first one? Or I think on this one, before I answer it, I think we need to have a look at what the corporate travel managers and the corporations are trying to achieve. And for many corporations, they're actually using the travel program and their policy to attract new talent and to retain the talent that they have today. So it's a really big mechanism in an organization. So I think for many agencies and for corporate travel managers, their vision is to get a great end-to-end traveler experience. So the technology that we're going to talk about today is really what underpins driving that entire ecosystem where travel management and travel policy is one component, and they use the technology to be able to drive that forward and use it better within their company. But I think if there was one trend that's, a lot of people are talking about and it's going to have a huge impact, I think it's going to be blockchain, to be honest.
Well, blockchain, we'll get into that more later. Let me come back to one of the first things you said, because I want to ask people in the audience if this is like how your company views this issue or not. So she said a lot of companies are using their corporate travel programs to drive employee loyalty and retention. I mean, when I worked for a big company, the corporate travel policy for me just felt like somebody has some rules of what I can and can't do, right? Not really. It wasn't a reason for me. I didn't feel like the company was using it to retain me. How many corporate travel managers are here? Just one. Two. Do you feel like your company's corporate travel program is designed to retain and attract and retain employees? Does your company view it as that kind of tool? Hold on.
I think we're getting there. We certainly have started to do a better job with the younger ranks of employees that we serve, of communicating, you can add a day on. Here, do you know you also get this perk? You could bring your family. I think making it more explicit as opposed to understood or implicit, some of the options or perks, so to speak. I do agree. I think that's the future. Thank you.
What company are you from? An agency in Canada. I want to apply to work there. Add an extra day, bring along your friend. Oh my gosh. How about you? Is your company also using it as a way to attract and retain employees? Yeah? Wow, that's good insight for me. Ken, so one big tech trend. We got blockchain. What do you got?
I think it's a good question. And I think that in the last few years, actually, there's been a lot of fads. And so I think the way to know which one is a big trend is to kind of go the opposite way. Like, what are the fads that are not going to stay? So, like, for example, gamification and some of these other kind of fad buzzwords have come and gone. I think what the travel managers have said, like how do we retain and attract our employees is key. And to me, that's just simplification. How do we simplify the travel experience? And so I think the tech category that's going to have the biggest impact is something that's going to help us simplify and just make it one platform based, so that whether I book online or whether I book offline, whether I book through my mobile device or through a computer, it's just going to be the same platform. So whereas we have all these buzzwords and we have different tech going on, at the end of the day, to me, the most important trend is bringing it all together in one place, being one platform, one database, one AI, or one source of truth. I think that's where people haven't done well. There's too many fads going back and forth.
All right, the new corporate travel buzzword for 2019, Ken Kuguru said it right here, simplification. Yeah. All right, so we got blockchain simplification. We're going to hit some of those as we go through. So a lot of people talking about AI, and you guys didn't mention AI, but if you're attending any of the sessions at the other conferences going on or other sessions here, I challenge you to get through a session without people dropping this buzzword, right? AI. So can we just give some examples? Is anything really happening in the corporate travel space as it relates to AI, or anything kind of on the cusp of happening related to AI? How will it be actually applied in the environments?
Well, interesting statistic. I'll start with an interesting statistic. So 40% of all Singaporeans believe that AI will be the end of civilization. So the most skeptical country in the world.
Who's Singaporean here?
Is that true?
Who believes that it's the end of the world? Okay.
You do have some. So if you do, you're with Elon Musk, right? So Elon Musk also believes that. So I think practical examples, to come back to what Brett said earlier, so bringing it really practical, I think Expedia does a really good job in terms of at least trying to integrate AI into our business. So we at Egencia have about a 90% online adoption rate, which means that 90% of our corporate travelers go online, versus as an industry, it's about 40 to 50%. So I think the reason we're able to do that is because we have some elements of AI in our business model. So for example, we learn what you like, what your travel preferences are. We try and predict where you want to go, who you want to book with, places you want to stay, where you want to sit in the airplane. So I think those are micro examples of AI, which we do as part of our business. And I think that's why we have that kind of online adoption model. So I don't think we've adopted the big AI, but I think we've integrated the small AI.
So it's kind of using AI for personalization and simplification of the user experience. I like that.
Well, I think with AI, it's not new. It's been around for quite an extensive amount of time. So if you read about IBM Watson, for example, it won Jeopardy in 2011. So it's just becoming more mainstream and more part of our daily lives. So there's a lot of companies. There's a company called Where2. It's a corporate booking app, and they use algorithms that actually look at personalization and company policy, and try to again bring it back to that whole end-to-end customer journey to be able to use AI to make that corporate booking app a lot easier for the person to use. Certainly from our side, we earlier this year we actually launched the IBM Travel Manager. So that's in partnership with IBM, using IBM Watson. And that is, bringing multiple sources of data together and actually having predictive analytics. So instead of having huge amounts of data that just have reactive reports and after the fact, being able to look at budgets and opportunities within the organization and actually driving that forward using some of the AI. So I don't think that it's necessarily there just to take jobs away or to change the industry. It's also to give us more insight to make the industry and make travel in corporate a lot more accessible to people, and a much easier thing to then, attract that talent and use it as a mechanism.
So near-term applications in predictive analytics, look next year's budget, next year's travel volumes?
Yeah, so anything from tomorrow onwards into the rest of the year, the following year, to actually say, based on trends and behaviors, looking at inventory, looking at supplier chains, bringing in expense management. So, today it sits in multiple silos. It's actually taking all of those silos that aren't necessarily air or GDS related, but are travel related, bringing them together and then giving, actionable insights behind that information.
All right, so AI means in the near term personalization and predictive analytics.
And actionable, yeah.
Actionable predictive analytics. Big data. I think actually 2019 is all about tiny data, but let's talk about big data and how organizations like Egencia or Travelport are leveraging those in the corporate travel managers world.
So again, big data.
A little bit closer, I think.
Yeah. Can you hear me? All right. So big data again is not something that's necessarily new, but I think they've predicted in the next 2 years there's going to be 40 zettabytes worth of data. So to put that into perspective, it's about 4 million years worth of HD video of data that's created. So we've got a real chance of having data fatigue where people have so much of it but they don't know what to do with it. So bringing it back to what we're doing as far as actionable insights and what we've done with IBM. You can also use big data as far as looking for personalization, so bringing that data into the front screen. So being able to, when you're booking, understand the traveller and understanding their preferences and what's important to them and driving that stuff through big data.
Yeah, we're like cutting through the buzzwords for you. So AI is about personalization, predictive analytics, and insights. And big data just sounds like this is just one of the building blocks that enables AI, right?
Yeah, true. Exactly. It's a building block. I think that an example of what Egencia is doing to make big data real and actionable, as Samantha was saying, is specifically for travel managers, right? So travel managers have to deal with all sorts of data, expense data, cost, the policy, all this kind of stuff. And so Egencia is trying to say, how can we use smart data? How can we be predictive about the data? And then bring a story. So make a story out of the data, right? So how do we bring it to life?
Give me an example of that. I don't know what that means, a story.
Yeah, so...
Corporate travel manager story out of the data. What is that?
So I think, data is all X's and O's. So it's just ones and zeros. And then you could start putting graphs on it. But graphs may or may not tell the story, right? So, but then when you're able to just easily, for example, we have an analytics studio, which is part of what we offer, standard, right? So the analytics studio is supposed to be, in the real world, we're getting better at it, we're not saying it's perfect, it's supposed to go into the data and pull out what the travel managers need and be able to show them in a dynamic and interactive way. And supposed to be smart. So as a travel manager says, no, I don't need that, and I don't need this view, I need that view, that should be, we want to get smarter about it so that the next version of the analytics studio will be able to bring to life the story that you need to tell. And as a travel manager, part of the story is I'm adding value. I'm saving costs to the company. I'm making traveler satisfaction better. And we want to be able to bring that story so that the travel manager can say, look what I am doing.
Look what I did.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I did, and this is the value that I'm bringing. And this is the journey that we've gone over the last couple months. So this is kind of what we're trying to help.
That's great, Ken.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm going to move us on. I got an exciting question at the end, so I want to make sure we get to those. Got about 15 minutes left. NDC, do we even need to talk about NDC? It's another buzzword I hear everyone using all the time. But I just don't understand why it's such an important acronym and why we should even care about it. As soon as somebody brings a real capability, just tell me what the capability is and I'll tell you if I'm interested. But why everyone's talking about this technology protocol or standard, I'm just lost. Give me some insights.
I mean, I tend to agree with you, Brett. I think that NDC is not, we're all trying to get the means to an end. So NDC is not the ultimate means to the end, and that we're all trying to have better business traveler satisfaction, easier point-to-point booking, And NDC sometimes helps you do that because it helps you connect directly to the source, and sometimes doesn't help you do that because the GDS may have more options, quicker search capabilities, more plugins, and more offerings like being able to check in your bag. So through the service.
Yeah, I mean, all the GDSs seem to be talking now. I mean, Travelport is a great example about, we're going to leverage what's workable with NDC now, but also kind of working, NDC plus other things together. So squeezing the best out of it. It seems like it's a journey, not
it's not the
launch.
It's not the ultimate end of the journey for sure. But I think that we as Expedia Group, Egencia, we're committed to whatever technology that's helping to simplify the experience. So the areas that NDC really helps that, there's no reason we own the technology. So there's no reason we can't build that stack to plug it in and be one of the first people to drive that technology. But at the same time, if you're just adding costs to the system, we're not a fan of that. So we're supportive and we're driving it, but we're also trying to shape the industry to say what's helping the traveler.
Right. Samantha?
Well, to break it down really simply, NDC is just a language. It's a capability for the airlines to be able to, code in a simple way to make it easier for people to access the content. So, yes, it's a buzzword, and yes, it's exciting, but it's one of the many building blocks for you to, coming back to that ecosystem and looking at that end-to-end travel experience, it's a building block in that process. So it's not the whole end-to-end process at this stage, but it's exciting and it is changing the industry. So I do think people should sit up and understand it, but it needs to be put into perspective as to how it fits into the process.
Important for corporate travel managers in 2019?
Yeah, I think it will be important moving forward. And just again, it comes down to NDC, so it's another acronym. It's another way for us to look really complicated in the industry. But it is a basic language. So to take 450 airlines and have 450 different ways of coding down into a much simpler way so that that last traveler, the person that matters, can get the content they want, the seat they want in the way that they want it. And that's the person that's the most important one.
All right, great. I'm moving on. I got 10 minutes. 2019 budgets. The most interesting questions come last, right? This isn't last, but we're counting down. This is like 3, 2, 1. 2019 budgets. So you're a corporate travel manager. You're sitting in that chair over there. You're thinking about 2019 right now. It's probably budget time. You might have just finished. If you didn't just finish budgets, you're getting ready to start. What are kind of the biggest focus areas you would be thinking about if you were working on your budget as a corporate travel manager?
I think mobile would be first. So if you don't have a mobile strategy, you should be looking at where you're going to invest your money to make sure that that you can have a mobile strategy. Certainly in Southeast Asia, last year more than 50% of travel commerce was done through a mobile app. So it's important, and people having access to a simplified mobile app that can actually take them through that end-to-end journey is really important. I think looking at data and how to move from being reactive into proactive, smart data is going to be important, and investing in that. And then lastly, looking at policy and program, is it working for the company? Is it simple? And are you using the technology so that that traveler gets why it's important, and they buy into it and they come on the journey as to why there's a policy in place?
Great. Ken?
Is this the last question?
No, you got two coming up.
Ah, okay.
You got 30 seconds to answer this one.
So
with a smart answer.
no, nothing much to add, really. I would, like Samantha said, focus not so much on budgets, but on travel policy, making sure the policy is correct and it's actually working. So I think you can throw tons of money at it or you can throw a little money at it. Neither of those really help if your policy is broken. So I think just spend the time and the energy on the travel policy, and then the budget will actually flow much easier.
Budget falls out of the policy. Interesting. All right. Last two questions. So I want to talk about, as we go forward, there's kind of all types of technology changes. We talked about AI, blockchain, big data. all these tech changes, mobile. I don't know why it's dives. Shouldn't be dives, drives. But is tech going to drive policy changes, or will policy drive tech changes?
So it's a good question.
Great question.
It's a great question, isn't it? I think, again, coming back to what I said at the beginning, travel programs and travel policy are now enticing people. People, the GBTA study last year said over 60% of candidates in North America will ask for the policy up front in an interview. So, people know that that's part of their work-life balance.
6% of candidates will ask for the travel policy in an interview? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, to make their decision if they want to work. So it's not just culture or brand anymore. It plays a big part. So I think, when you're looking at that, and when you're looking at that end-to-end travel experience, the technology is going to underpin all of that. So, people want to know that they're working for a company that's invested in technology that makes their travel experience easy. They want to know that they don't need to spend hours focusing on travel rather than focusing on the job at hand. So I do see technology actually driving policy and program in the future. And we're already seeing a lot now. So quite a few of the progressive companies in Southeast Asia, it's really, really underpinned by their technology.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you'd asked me 3 or 4 years ago, even though I wasn't in the industry then, I would say definitely policy drives tech. It makes sense, right? The policy should be first, and everything around it.
You build the tech to
you
execute the policy.
the tech to enable the policy. However, sitting where I am now, and sitting in the age we are in now, and AI, and machine learning, big data, I would actually say this is the stage, we're finally at the stage where we can allow policy to be driven by tech a bit, because tech is enabling us to do some things we couldn't do before. So tech is enabling us to, for example, concrete example, maybe in the old days, you really do need to have 4 layers of approvals before the guy can travel, because you just need to make sure that that people are adhering to the policy. But now, because of the tech that allows a much tighter bandwidth and makes sure that it drives travelers to the policy, you really only need 1 or 2 approvers. So now we can allow technology to reduce the red tape and get rid of some of the policy things that we had to have in the past. So I think now we're actually at that point. So the tech is getting strong enough that we can let it change, let it evolve the policy.
Yeah. I think you should also consider there's a lot of companies that no longer have policies as well. So, if you look at small companies that are startup companies, they don't need approval processes, but they do need good technology. They do want to be able to book everything. They want to get hold of their travel management company like them. They want to know when things go wrong, they're taken care of. So, that technology, sits with the travel management company, and that's actually what people are looking for. It's not just companies that have policy that are driven by this.
Yeah, and another comment, right, to your point. So millennials, right? So millennials are coming into the workforce. They have their own culture. We're all trying to engage them. We're trying to get them into the company. We're trying to keep them, and they totally... many millennials here, right, everyone's on their cell phone, right? They haven't even listened to me at all, right? So this is the new world we live in. So
I'm listening to you.
So we call it the Expedia generation, because these people are just used to booking their own travel in a certain way. So why do you fight it? When these people come in the workforce, why try to have them book in a way that they're not used to? They're anyway taking the screenshot of Kayak or Expedia and sending it to travel consultant. Let's work with the millennial generation, and let's allow them to kind of work the way they work, and that's kind of in a technology environment.
All right, so we have a consensus that tech drives policy, or tech dives policy, if you prefer that one. Who's millennial here? Or I guess this question would be anybody. Who is actually asked in a job interview, can I see your corporate travel policy? Is it just me? I'm like that old and out of touch. I would be completely scared, and you can tell I'm not a guy who's scared. But I would be completely scared in a job interview to go in and say, hey, Brett, any questions from you? Yeah, can I see a copy of your corporate travel policy? I can't imagine that. But you're saying it's 60% of millennials or job interview candidates overall?
Yeah, and they don't link it necessarily to millennials, but it's, times are changing and people are understanding that they've got to, travel is a perk, but it's also the responsibility for your job. So
You're old when people start using the phrase times are changing when they're speaking to you. Wow.
Well, 90% of travelers enjoy traveling. I don't know if that's changed, according to the recent survey, and 60% don't miss their spouse.
So you don't get a lot of requests for bring spouse along. All right, running to the last question, but that's a soundbite of the session so far. 6% of people ask for the corporate travel policy when they interview for a job. Amazing. All right, diving on, impact on organizations and people. So I think this is the real question. All of this kind of tech driving policy, all of these technology changes. Let's talk some about the future of the corporate travel manager and the structure of kind of corporate travel management inside organizations. Because it used to be you had if you were a large multinational, you may have a corporate travel department that's 10 people, 20 people. But how does AI, personalization, machine learning, blockchain, mobile impact kind of the future of the role of the corporate travel manager and actually the organizational structure?
So again, I think a lot of this technology is actually going to help people look when they've got large call centers to support their travel, reducing some of those costs. So yeah, there are going to be changes in organizations, but there's always massive value in the travel management companies. There's massive values in the travel manager actually managing the program and the policy. But I think the place in the organization will be changing because they can actually start working closer with people like HR or, going back to the recruitment, how do we recruit people? How do we make our policy more inviting? How do we make our program more inviting? So I actually think their roles are going to change somewhat to be, more relevant within the organization of how they use travel in a really positive way to build their business up.
I mean, go ahead, Ken.
I agree.
That's simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think the role of corporate travel manager for people that are older than many of the millennials or Generation Z people here to me, it was like an administrator, policy, police, but it's definitely already shifting as you talk about to, a major part of why people want to be a part of a company. Yeah. And then I think in the future, as more and more of the administration function of corporate travel managers is done by automation, the role just transitions further and further on this end where you become kind of a first level organizational function trying to drive, employee retention and organizational brand value.
Yeah.
Less on executing the physical policy, because the execution element, which used to be a big part of the department, feels like will be getting smaller and smaller, right?
And I guess that's the hope, because you want to bring, the reason people don't follow policy is because they haven't been brought on the journey as to, when you buy that hotel room, how much is included because of the corporate rate. They miss a lot of those things. So, if you move away from having to be the administrator where you're hitting them with the stick and actually be able to work with the teams to be able to take them on that journey and bring them into the policy and the program, companies are going to, come under their budgets. They're going to be more informed. Duty of care is going to be better. So, I don't think anybody ever I don't think you moved into the role to be the person to hit everyone over the sting. It should be a fun role. It should be interacting with suppliers and actually, making it work for the company. But it's also, there's many organizations that don't have a specialist corporate travel manager. It falls under procurement or, weird places like that. So I think some of this data will help actually organize travel in the right space in the business.
Right. Any questions for Ken Kuguru or Samantha Williams? Anyone? All right, final words, Ken.
Well, I'll just echo on the last question, right? So, I think that I agree it's the holy grail where we can self-police and we don't really need a huge travel department, and everyone's able to kind of, it's a new world where we're either rating each other, or it's like, it's Airbnb style where everyone is kind of keeping everybody accountable. And to me, this is actually the concept of blockchain. So you have a trustless society. So I don't know if blockchain itself will be the first, travel will be the first industry that blockchain revolutionizes. It will revolutionize some industries. But I think the concept of blockchain, the idea of this trustless kind of, without a central governing body, that concept will be impactful. And of course, payments will be impactful. Bitcoin, we were one of the first organizations to accept Bitcoin. So I think these things will be integrated. But I do agree that the greatest impact would be if we're able to then govern ourselves, and then the idea of a policy would actually be minimal. So that would be cool.
All right, Ken Kuguru from Egencia, Samantha Williams from Travelport. Thank you so much. Great session.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brett.